will be with Bill and my brother Aliko here, because this effort here really was led by three young women, Hadil, Halima, and Chelsea. And it's really is a young people effort, young people product. And I said, why you want three old men to come and open this? And anyway, but we receive instructions from our children, so I guess we had to show up, And right, we're going to talk really about Africa as investment destination. What's the future of Africa? Where are we going? And it's really wonderful to have the perception of my friends here who really address it from different angles and different approach. We have the investor and we have the philanthropist. I think it is really interesting combination to move forward. I sit in the middle. I was an investor, and I wouldn't call myself, and although I'm a member of your Giving Village, but I think of myself more as an activist than probably philanthropist. So, well, it's a good combination of different people. Bill, let me start with you as our guest here. You have done wonderful stuff. I mean, you have been really the poster child for philanthropy. Child with between, with brackets, But you just tell us what attracted you to Africa? What are you interested in us? Your president here call us shitholes. What are you interested? What are you interested in shitholes?
And Africa is where we're going to meet some of our toughest challenges. Sadly, the impact of climate change, although Africa had the least to do to causing climate change, the actual difficulties will first be felt by the farmers of Africa. And already their base of productivity is about 1/4 of what you have in, say, the United States or in Europe. You also have some diseases that, for a variety of reasons, including just the weather and the equatorial location, malaria is far worse in Africa. 90% of the deaths are young children in Africa. Likewise, HIV and TB have large pockets in Africa. And so, it'd be great if the world could give Africa much better seeds, if it can figure out how to minimize climate change, and if it can give tools of health so that not only do we reduce the deaths, but also for the kids who grow up, that they are very healthy. Malnutrition today affects about 40% of the children, and that holds them back. Even when they get education, their ability to contribute to Africa is not as strong as it should be. So, I think if the right things are done, we can unleash all that potential. And it's exciting. In Africa, some countries, the last 10 years have done super well. The health improvement has been amazing. Yeah. In places, the agricultural improvement is amazing. So you do see a lot of points of light that really point in the direction.
Bill, we are Africa are very grateful what you've been doing. And I think it's not only by getting involved and putting money into health, in agriculture, etc., but deal with the global fund, etc. That's wonderful. And leading from the front by saying, okay, I'm putting my money here. Where are you guys? I think that helped really to be a catalytic. Can I ask at least the African guy sitting here to really give this guy a hand? Really.
Thank you.
Aliko, Bill started by talking about the young people. Now, this is a big issue. Anywhere you go, people say, okay, by 250, half the young people in the world in Africa. But the question always, where the jobs come from? Okay, we have a problem. And how do you see the future of young people in Africa? Are we be able to cope? Is it a blessing or is it a curse? Because there are two narratives here. Are we able to deal with that growth of population to our advantage, or it's going to end up being a source of instability and more deaths in the Mediterranean?
No, I think it won't be a source of instability for us. In fact, it will be a great plus for us, because when you look at the population of Africa, more than 60% are actually below the age of 30.
Yeah.
So all what we need to do is to be very, very creative and see what kind of jobs are we going to, mind you, we have 60% of the world's arable land. And when you look at the estimation by one of either McKinsey, you'll see that by 2050, the demand on food alone will go up by 110%. So with that, all what you need to do in Africa is to now tilt back and focus on manufacturing and agriculture. And I think there's quite a lot of things that we're doing which can change the entire narrative, and which will make us to provide jobs for Africans. Today, as we speak, agriculture is not all about poor people, because you use a lot of technology, the yield per hectare, everything has improved. So when you look at it, a company like ours, we were never ever interested in agriculture. But right now, we have moved into agriculture, and I can tell you that in the next 4 or 5 years, our company will not have less than 200,000 workers. And that's to invest, and that is the reason why now, let me give you a typical example. 65 to 70% of the world's cocoa is being produced between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. And what do they have? They have only $6 billion total of export earnings, but the entire cocoa market in the world is 100 billion. So what we want to do is that rather than being exporters of raw materials, we now want to be exporters of finished products. And that is how now we can enrich our people. Our farmers will become rich. And, then people will now become interested in agriculture.
So that's it. So you see agriculture as one of the areas where we can have more employment and
you make money, because before, let me give you an example.
But the guys who make money out of the coca is Starbucks. It's not our farmers.
Yes.
Yeah. So
well, I don't know who makes, but
how?
Well, yes, it applies to all the agricultural,
minerals,
minerals, wheat. So there are quite a lot of jobs that we can actually, do. I mean, for example, why should Nigeria depend on only oil? Oil is the only contribution of oil in Nigeria is 8.8%. Agriculture is more than 23%. So you can see that we are not really dependent 100% on that. Yes, the only unfortunate thing is that 90% of our foreign exchange earnings, are coming from oil, and also 60% of government's budget.
Okay, let me ask Bill about this. Bill, how do you see the future of agriculture in Africa?
That is super important. Africa today is a net importer of food.
Yes.
So it's kind of a contradiction. Why is the continent where the availability of labor is the highest, where the availability of unused land is the highest, where the productivity per hectare is the lowest, why can't it move not only to be self-sufficient, but also to be a net exporter? And so the agriculture sector can get better. You don't want to rely just on the agricultural sector. It can create jobs and more value, but as you get somewhat more mechanized, then you do free up labor for other activity, services, manufacturing. A challenge is that the educational sector has to come in and do a really good job. In agriculture, you don't need a very high education. But for things like services and manufacturing, you really need not only high school, but a fair bit of college graduates. So it's a challenge to Africa. While it revs up agriculture, it can't just do agriculture. It's got to improve education and have the cities become sort of a source of export receipts as well as the rural areas.
But agriculture also need infrastructure. What do you think?
No, I think the infrastructure has to be done by the private sector, not by government. Government's job is actually to encourage people, facilitate, and then they will depend on their taxes. And these things, they are possible. They, I mean, we have demonstrated a few of these things.
Okay.
You're also a shareholder, right?
This guy is too sharp, yeah. Okay, you moved on.
That's right. So when you look at it, when we look at the issue of infrastructure, we say, okay, Africa cannot really grow without infrastructure, and we need $170 billion to be spent on agriculture. We went out to make sure that, yes, we don't really import cement. We make sure that we produce cement in, today, 14 African countries.
Okay, I think we all agree, Aliko, that investments, as you know, somebody invested in Africa before and I still invest in Africa, there is a problem of perception of Africa in the mind of investors. Some of it comes out, of course, of ignorance, because Africa is 54 countries, and these countries also have different characteristics. In the media outside, people usually talk about Africa as just one lump sum of something. So if there is a problem in Somalia, or if there is a problem in the Sahel or somewhere, it's a problem in Africa. And that creates a perception that Africa really is like the Wild West or like a dangerous place, and that doesn't help with investors.
Well,
the other problem, I think, also is this perception of corruption. Let's be frank. In a lot of minds in the West here, people think Africa is a very corrupt place. Corruption is a problem, a global problem, but I don't think it is an African problem. Corruption exists everywhere, and actually many African countries are quite good. Some African countries actually are better than some European countries if you look at the global index of corruption. I mean, countries like Botswana, etc. But always people pick up on the DRC or the few corrupt places, that becomes Africa. So we have this issue of perception, and I think we have a big fight in our hand really to close this gap between reality and perception, because that's what will help investors really to come to invest in Africa. Because this is the last frontier now.
Well, Africa is like actually, is being blown out of proportion. Yes, there is corruption, but corruption does not stop people from doing genuine business. You don't really have to give anybody a bribe to do whatever that you are doing. And it has actually shown that, yes, some of us have been very, very successful in all the businesses that we've been doing without getting involved in corrupting anybody. Okay, so what I think the difference between Africa and Asia, yes, the Asian tigers, they were able to grow because they are really focused, and they have more entrepreneurs than Africa, because some of us were always waiting for foreign investors to come. A foreign investor will not really go into where he's not very much aware of. So you need those local investors to be able to lead in expanding the growth or the trajectory of African economies. But, I mean, let me give you an example. For example, today, when you look at it, a lot of people, they try to discourage even the Africans from investing. You will not believe that the entire sub-Saharan Africa, we only have 2 working refineries. So every single thing that you are talking about in terms of petroleum products is being imported. And because anytime when somebody wants to build a refinery, they say, no, don't even try it, because it is a no-go area. You can't even do it. It's not done. It's not possible. So these are the sort of things that we have. So we must change the narrative and say, okay, fine, how do we really do it ourselves? Okay, the economy of Japan or Korea was not established by the Americans. So we have to do it ourselves.
Bill, you met a lot of African people, and we are frank, we're all friends here. And what is honestly your perception of corruption of Africa? Is it a major problem? Does it hinder the work of your foundation or any investments you made there?
Well, corruption is a huge problem. I mean, the two most visible countries, because they have the two biggest economies, are South Africa and Nigeria. And, parts of the government budget does not go to help the people in the best way possible. And corruption has this terrible effect. Donors are very chicken about corruption. Yeah. If a rich world donor gives, say, $1 billion, if there's a news story about a few 100,000 of it being misused, that will, get the headlines, and that donor is not going to come back again.
Yes.
Likewise, in these countries, the amount being collected from the domestic economy, tax-wise, is very, very low. So Nigeria is the lowest in the world of any established economy. And the bootstrap of saying to the people, hey, we're going to put in a value-added tax, but we're going to have better roads. We're going to put in a value-added tax and the education will improve. Bootstrapping that is very difficult if people are cynical domestically. Forget what anyone outside the country thinks. It just makes it harder. And so, in Nigeria, having starting at the state level, to have exemplary governors who clearly are minimizing the corruption and showing that the current revenues, the health, the education, roads, although we don't work on that, so I'm not an expert on that piece. I do think that if we can get a new generation of governors, they don't all have to be young, that are trying to be exemplars, then you can start building that credibility. The area that we work in, healthcare, primary healthcare, it's not subject to gigantic corruption. It's not like an oil deal or a road that there's a bunch of money and you may spend the money and not get the road. In health, we import the vaccines, so the most expensive input comes in kind. So you can't, and there's no black market for that. And the labor market is not that gigantic. So primary health care can work everywhere in Africa, and that's a key piece of building things up. But you publish a very honest set of figures, which you get help from Transparent International and other people. I'm afraid those figures really do tell the story, which is that there is work to be done on corruption, not just in Africa, but including
everywhere,
in Africa.
because there is a thesis also that international business also is a player in the corruption area.
I have to say
and people have to behave both sides.
The U.S. passed a thing called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Yeah. And as people said when it was being passed, it has damaged U.S. business. It means that businesses from other countries, I won't name them, can still play by tough rules. Now, Europe later adopted the same sort of things, and even some of the great companies. Siemens is a great company, but they had some activities that they had to change. So the FCPA, I do think, has been a great thing for the world. If we can bring in all the actors, then we can minimize the degree to which it's this outside influence, which certainly for oil deals and defense contracts, there's been a lot where it's the external actor comes in with the way of doing business.
But Bill, I mean, I am a great admirer of the FCPA, and we always, businessmen, corrupt leaders, to hide their illegitimate gain in this opaque. And so we have been fighting together with a lot of other civil society groups and business groups to change the law. Because we say, why do we need to have this class of companies? What function does it do for anybody? And Fortunately, it has been a successful campaign. The British Parliament passed a law. They said there must be a public register for ownership of companies. Europeans passed similar law. We're still fighting at the Congress here
You're right.
to pass this law. And I was surprised when there was a big fuss about Panama Papers and the Paradise Islands papers, when actually there are more anonymous companies in the United States than in Panama or Paradise. I said, guys, what is this hypocrisy? What do you, you know, we
Why are
have
you
it here at
focusing on
home.
Africa? Yeah.
Yeah, we have it here at home. So this is one, and I was talking to retrieve money, illegitimate money from even Abasha, as far back as Abasha, which was hidden in, really. And what I was told actually that the reputation damage now to banks and is helping in really people behaving well. Although some countries don't behave well. I heard that there was $7 million Swiss government managed to retrieve from Mobutu's money and has been begging DRC government to take the money and refused to take it. And then another Mr. Mobutu, who was the son, who was deputy prime minister, then he said, okay, they don't want the money, give it to me. They gave it to him. And there is a similar situation in Nigeria, actually. Some money from Abasha, the government refused to take it back. And
No,
I told them, I'm going to speak about this publicly. He said, please do. And people asked the questions, what's going on here?
But you know,
and
it
deal
is
with
one of the great things that we have, you know, having this center. So when we now sit here, we'll discuss all issues about culture, about business,
Yes.
about policy, you know, and, you know, that will help quite a lot. And I'm
I'm,
sure...
yeah, I'm told that it is 0 now, so I think we need to wrap up the discussion, unfortunately. We can spend all afternoon talking with two wonderful people here. Just to sum up, I think in general, we think the future in Africa really is young people, educated young people, not too many, hopefully. And, and investment is very essential for Africa, and Africa should be open for investment. We have reasonable rule of law. It's not perfect, but it's really reasonable, and we have our own experience to show that. We need courage in addressing our issues, whether family planning or corruption or whatever. We're not shying away from anything, and we hand over, probably as older people, a continent which is, yeah, maybe is reasonable health, but we hope you young people take it forward. And I hope this place play a role in really moving it. As Bono said, this is going to be, Bono is an Irish musician who is a supporter of this. He said, this is a wonderful, really street signpost to Africa and across, you know, between Harlem and Wall Street, yeah, which I think is a good statement. Thank you, Bill, and thank you.
Good job.
Thank you very much. Thank you.